Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. Today, I'm speaking through a heart that has been cracked wide open. I never imagined I'd be recording this episode this way. And it's, believe me, it's not polished. It's not scripted in my usual way, but it's a raw, aching cry to our world. It's a raw, aching cry from my heart. I was 13 years old when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. I knew it was a huge deal back then. Everyone did. But growing up in Southern California, I wasn't deeply affected by discrimination. It felt distant, not part of my world. But a few weeks ago, I visited the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, and everything shifted for me. I stood in front of the very balcony where Dr. King took his final breath, where he was assassinated. And something in that moment cracked me open. I had an epiphany. And I realized that the driving force behind Martin Luther King Jr.'s activism wasn't just civil rights. It was his faith. It was his Christianity, his unshakable belief that every single human being was a child of God. Now, I knew he was a man of faith, but I didn't really know how deep it was. That love, not hate, was the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. It's as simple as that. And that nonviolence wasn't just a strategy for him, it was his way of being. And in that moment of clarity, it hit me like a lightning bolt. It was the one thing that I see today missing in our discourse over and over and over. We've lost the messaging that Dr. King shared with us. And in light of today's tragic news, it feels more important than ever for me to share what I'm about to say. The events of yesterday unfolded in real time in horror, starting at 12:20 p.m. For some reason, I was aware of it immediately, and I was shocked as I learned that Charlie Kirk had been shot. But more than that, I was gutted because I just knew in my soul that it was fatal. And this deep ache rose up in me, echoing something from that 13-year-old girl who didn't understand the historical impact of what had just happened. But I do now as a 70-year-old woman. This visceral sense of history repeating itself. You see, Charlie Kirk, no matter what you think of him, he was a man of bold truth. He told his truth. He was a man of fierce love and unapologetic devotion to this country. He was assassinated yesterday, and I cannot just sit in silence at this point. So if you're listening to this and you're one of the many already online saying things like, he deserved it, or that's his karma, I saw those posts and I was appalled. And you're probably already clicked off at this point. Because honestly, therein lies the problem. The divisiveness and the inability to listen to other views other than yours. And that's what Charlie did best. He listened to everybody. But if you haven't clicked off, if you're still here, maybe, just maybe, this is a crack in the wall, a sliver of light trying to break through the ache we're all feeling as a country. Because this moment, it's bigger than politics. It's about who we choose to become in the face of heartbreak. Sitting here on the anniversary of 9/11, are we going to multiply the hate or reflect back love? So today I offer this message, not just as a tribute, but as a call to action to anyone that's listening. A call for unity, a call for light, a call for the kind of love that Martin Luther King Jr. and Charlie Kirk lived and died for. I can say unequivocally that Charlie Kirk is the Martin Luther King of this generation. And history will bear that out. When I heard the news yesterday, I was shocked and then I collapsed in tears. Because this is not just political violence. This, my friends, is spiritual violence. A man who stood for truth, for dialogue, for holding the line on values in a time when our culture is spinning, was murdered for it. Charlie Kirk wasn't perfect. Neither was Martin Luther King. Neither was JFK. Neither was Bill Clinton. Neither am I. Neither are you. But these men were vessels of something bigger than themselves. Both of them became lightning rods of radical love. And lightning rods always attract the storm. So they were both dreamers. And at first glance, they may seem like opposites. Dr. King in the 60s marching for civil rights, Charlie Kirk beginning in 2012 founding Turning Point USA, standing in college auditoriums speaking truth to Gen Z. But listen deeper and you'll hear the same heartbeat. Martin Luther King said, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that," which is absolutely 100% the truth of this planet that we live on. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And Charlie said, "We must be bold in truth, but humble in spirit," which is a very similar quote to Martin Luther King in his book, Strength to Love. Charlie said, "We don't cancel our opponents. We invite them into dialogue," which is what he did every single day of his life. Both these men were prophetic. Both called for personal responsibility. Both believed in the power of faith and family. And both were hated for it. Hate will never solve our problems. I created a podcast called Radical Responsibility Revolution because being radically responsible is hard. Standing in your truth is hard. When someone is willing to do it in the face of death threats on a daily basis, as both of these men did, in my opinion, is heroic. I don't know many people that will do that. And during my trip to the Civil Rights Museum, I was struck by the foundational Christian faith of Dr. King. It was his core. And frankly, parallels Charlie exactly. Martin Luther King was about nonviolence. He was about love. He was about the knowingness that God is in everyone. God is in everyone. Period. Full stop. He was willing to talk with anyone, share ideas with anyone, and came from that place of we are all one. Charlie was that voice as well. So I ask, when did we decide that people who think differently are our enemies if we are all one with one another? Because you stand in your truth, that makes you evil? I don't think so. When did we forget that we are one nation under God? I suppose there are voices that have always professed this. I don't. Charlie was a fierce advocate. Yes, he was loud. Yes, he was bold. So was Martin Luther King. But he was also deeply loving, deeply faithful. And he was willing to share that message to young people to know what America was built on. He wanted to share the values that made this country worth fighting for in the same way that Martin Luther King was an advocate for the human rights of those whose voices were squashed, which was the foundation of this Constitution and Bill of Rights that are the governing light of this country. And for that, for speaking truth in a time of manufactured narratives, both were murdered. Let that land. This wasn't just an attack on a man. It was an attack on free speech to foster fear. It was an attack on love and truth and legacy. And here's what I want to say. We don't fight hate with more hate. We cannot meet violence with vengeance. We must reflect love back into the world, just like Martin Luther King did, and his legacy lives on, and Charlie's legacy will live on. So just like Martin Luther King and Gandhi, Charlie tried to do exactly that by standing up for something higher than himself. How many of us are willing to say, I'm going to stand and hold the higher ground for love? This hurts so much. And it reveals to me that Charlie Kirk was the Martin Luther King of this generation. And I do not say that lightly. I believe that I was meant to go to that Civil Rights Museum to see the parallels in these two amazing men. He was a builder, a unifier, a truth teller, a spark. I've had the privilege to train leaders my entire life. And what I know that makes a true leader is not charisma or eloquence. It's alignment. Alignment with your values, with truth, with your truth, with something greater than self-preservation. And I can say unequivocally, Charlie was aligned with his values, his faith, his trust in his God fully, and the culture couldn't take it. He was aligned with this faith and his family and his values, particularly the value of freedom. He died wearing a shirt, t-shirt, a plain t-shirt with the word freedom on it. And whether you agree with his policies, he, just as Martin Luther King, was unwavering in his love of this freedom and the message that it belongs to all. It belongs to all as an unalienable right given by God, not by the government. What we're seeing now is not just political polarization. It's spiritual warfare. We've lost the capacity to disagree without dehumanizing each other. There is no place in a civilized society, no place in a civilized society to celebrate the assassination of someone who does not agree with you. There is no place to debate without destruction, to speak without being silenced. And if we don't interrupt this pattern with love, the darkness will consume us all. It consumed Charlie. It consumed Martin Luther King and so many before them and along the way. It's time now to take stock of who we have become. What did they die for? Martin Luther King died with his dream unfinished. Charlie Kirk died with his dream under assault. They both said they had a dream, and they both lived their dreams fully, full out loud. And I pray that neither one of their dreams is unfinished. They both died sowing seeds of love over hate, faith over fear, responsibility over victimhood. And now it's our turn to water those seeds. Martin Luther King said, "Let no man pull you so low as to hate him. Let no man pull you so low as to hate him." And Charlie said, "Even in the face of lies, we will speak truth. Even in the face of hatred, we will reflect love." These aren't just nice quotes. These are blueprints for our humanity and this place called America. So we have a choice. Where do we go from here? First, we have to stop reacting. We have to start reflecting. Reflecting on where we've been, who we are, what this country was founded on. The unalienable right to our soul. We have to stop virtue signaling and start virtue embodying. We have to embody these virtues every single day, every single minute. We have to stop looking at people as threats and start seeing everyone as sacred. We do not answer this atrocity with more rage. We cannot. We cannot use hate. We have to answer this call with clarity, courage, and a renewed commitment to walk like they walked. I know some of you are listening. If you've gotten this far and you don't agree with Charlie Kirk, I am absolutely amazed. But the fact is it doesn't matter whether you agreed with Charlie or Martin Luther King or anybody else. We have to begin to say that that's okay. You know, Martin Luther King wasn't universally loved in his day either. I promise you, he's a legend now. But the fact of the matter is that they both loved you, both of them. And they both believed in the possibility of this country to grow through inner transformation, through self-responsibility, and through this thing called radical, inconvenient love. It is so inconvenient to love somebody that you don't agree with, but that's where we have to begin. I'm weeping today because I feel like we've lost the plot. We're tearing each other apart over politics, over beliefs, over things that should be debated with respect, not settled with bloodshed. This is one of the reasons I wrote this book called Your Inner Billionaire. Because we have forgotten that our real currency is connection with one another. Our real wealth is truth, integrity, courage, not hate, not violence. Charlie lived those things. And whether you agreed with his politics or not, his mission was clear. He knew it and he lived it. He wanted to wake people up. He wanted to unite people under something real. And he wanted to call them back to God, to country, and conscience. I don't know how you can find fault in that. You may disagree with his policies, but the idea that we're people of faith and spirituality, not just religion, but spirituality. And I know that some of you listening certainly don't share his political views, but that's okay. But if your first response to his death is good riddance, he deserved it, that was his karma, then I say you've abandoned your soul, your own spiritual soul. If you can't see the tragedy in this, And if you can't feel the rip in our collective heart over this incredible injustice, then it's time to sit with that. This isn't about right versus left anymore. This is a spiritual reckoning. This is good versus evil. This is love versus fear. Take a breath. As I said, I've been privileged to train leaders for decades. And real leadership requires courage, humility, and vision. And Charlie had that. He's not a perfect human. He's a spiritual being having a human experience. He was evolving. He was coming into his own. He was a 30-year-old husband and father of young girls, taken away like that. But he showed up every day with a fire in his belly and God in his heart. And now his voice has been silenced. He joins the ranks of JFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Martin Luther King Jr., and so many others that had attempted assassinations, including our own president. But too many others who have dared to speak from the soul have been silenced. I don't want to just mourn. I want to honor him by doing what he did. He spoke boldly, he lived fully, and he led with love. And I want to challenge you, wherever you are on the political spectrum, to reflect love back into your conversations, to stop reposting this horrific garbage on the internet that fuels the algorithm of hate. You do realize that you're fueling an algorithm of hate. Oh, we have to stop. We have to begin to share love and shift that algorithm. We have to actually listen when someone says, I see the world differently than you. I want us to stop playing small spiritual games. Stop pretending that politics and prayer don't mix. They do. Your silence is complicity. So, Charlie, I wish you could hear this. You cracked me wide open today. I promise I will not let your message die. I will not shrink in the face of cancel culture or cowardice. I will be louder. I will be more loving. I will be more courageous because you were. And to anyone who hears this, let's be builders now. Not just talkers, not just critics, but builders of a new dream. Martin Luther King gave us a dream. Charlie Kirk had a dream and gave us the microphone. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. You awakened something in us, and now it's up to us to keep it lit. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your light. And I want to leave you with a quote out of my book. We are not the creators of the light. We are the reflectors of it. You are reflecting the light or the hate within you. So let's reflect the light. Shine, reflect, stand tall. We need you now more than ever. If you feel this too, don't just cry. Don't just comment. Commit. Commit to being a light. Commit to raising your voice for what matters. Commit to love even when it hurts.